slaid number 32, sealt hakkab pihta vormide osa, aga tegelikult ma ei tahaks üldse siit praegu hakata, vaid võtan lahti need vormielementide näited, mis ma olen teinud sinna HTML, CSS, examples alla. Siia on kokku kuhjatud kõikvõimalikud vormiväljad, mida toetavad põhiliselt brauserid. Ma olen siit välja jätnud väga spetsiifilised väljad, mida mõned brauserid ei toeta. Vaatame, kuidas üldse vormi teha. Mille jaoks üldse vormi vaja on? Jah, ja kus me seda üldisemalt nimetaksime? Ütleme, et kui sul on veebileht, kus ei ole mitte ühtegi vormi, milline ta on siis?
Sa saad sealt ainult infot vaadata, aga ise midagi teha ei saa.
Jah, ta on ühesuunaline, seda nimetati veeb 1 ja vormide lisandumisega tekkis veeb 2, tähendab, et veebis sai kahesuunaline, mitte ainult ei näidatud mingit teavet lugejatele, vaid lugejad said ise anda tagasisidet ka, et hakkas toimuma interaktsioon ja veidi dünaamikat juurde. Kuidas vormi lehele teha? Selleks on selline element nagu form. Ja siia form elemendile saame anda kaasa atribuute. Üks oluline atribuut on method. Kui meil on lokaalne vorm ja meil ei ole vaja andmeid kuskile saata, siis me ei pea seda meetodit üldse määrama, aga kui me andmeid saadame, siis me kasutame seda atribuuti. No siin praegu on selle atribuudi väärtus get, siin võib olla ka post, võib olla ka put, võib olla ka delete, mida on veel. Selline lähenemine on nagu rest, selles just eeldataksegi seda, et kui me andmeid pärime kuskilt, siis see on get, kui me andmeid kustutame, see on delete, ja kuidas nüüd selle puti ja postiga oli, üks oli siis uuendamiseks, üks oli lisamiseks. Muidu hiljem, kui me hakkame dünaamilist poolt ehitama, siis seda serveri poolt ka, siis me peame teadma, millised on näiteks geti ja posti erinevused. Nimelt seal üks võimaldab rohkem andmeid kui teine. Siis enctype, selle väärtuseks me saame panna siis seda, kas see vorm võimaldab ka faili üles laadida või on ta lihtsalt teksti sisestamiseks. Praegu on siin multipart form data, see tähendab, et see vorm võimaldab ka faili üles laadimist. Ja mina üldiselt kasutangi seda väärtust alati enctype'ina, et siis ma ei pea neid teisi meelde jätma. Õigemini ma ei jäta seda ka meelde, ma kopeerin eelneva pealt. Ja nüüd need elemendid siia vormi sisse on paigutatud tablina, lihtsalt sellepärast, et ma saaksin neid joondada, kuna nad on enamasti ühesuguse pikkusega. Muidugi me võime tabli asemel kasutada siin ka flexi või mida iganes muud, sest need andmed muidu ei ole tabeli kujul, aga me võime ette kujutada praegu, et see on nagu tabel, kuhu me andmeid sisestame. Esimene väljatüüp on tavaline tekstiväli. Väljasid me saame lisada sellise elemendiga nagu input. Vaikimisi inputi tüüp, see on siis siin määratud type, selle väärtus on tekst. Nüüd on siin veel üks lisaatribuut read only. See tähendab seda, et me ei saa seda välja väärtust muuta. Vahel on see vajalik. Et meil on lihtsalt vaja kuvada kellegi andmeid kellelegi teisele, aga just seda välja muuta ei saa, kuna seda just ei ole. Siis me siin veel näidata saame, et kui mitu märki me saame sinna sisestada. Max length. Siin on öeldud, et kuni 8 märki. Et kui 8 märki on täis, rohkem sinna ei mahu lihtsalt. Neimist on kasu siis, kui me andmeid saadame posti või get'iga. Unless we send data, there is no name attribute needed. On focus, this is like on click or on mouse down or on key up. There are different events that can be triggered while using mouse or keyboard or touchpad. On focus means that if we enter that field, then that command, that is the value of this variable on focus, will be executed. In this case, if I click this field, you see that the whole text will be selected. This is done by this little JavaScript part, this.select. This, in this case, is the input element, and select is a method of input elements that we can use. Select does selecting the whole content of the field. Then there is title. You already know what's title. Can you say? What does it do?
Like if you hover over it?
Yes, let's hover. Input for common text appears. This is explanation what this field is for. It should be used. Any help means that we can use, we should use them. But for obligatory fields that we demand to be filled in, we can also set an asterisk. So that way the user knows, okay, I have to fill in this field. There are some forms where asterisks are not used, then users do not know which fields are demanded to fill in and fill out, and which fields are not. And there's something more. If I hover or above it, then another text appears required. This is achieved by using upper element that you know from text part already. Next field type is our text as well, but this is not read-only. We can enter here. Max length is 5, so you see that we cannot enter more letters than 5 here. This has on focus this select as well. And here is something new, a new attribute, pattern. The value of pattern can be any regular expression. With help of regular expressions, you can cover different type of text. For instance, here it says it should begin with text 1 or with text 2 and end with that. So begin is that roof sign symbol, and the end symbol is this vertical stricken through S. And the pipe here in the middle means or, either the left side or right side. Now we see that there is a red border around this field. This is because I have entered stgat here, which does not conform to the rule of the pattern. If I enter here text 1, the red border disappears. That means text 1 is acceptable according to the rule in pattern. And it is also required. That means if I leave it blank and blur that field, then a red border appears again. Next field type This is also a text input, but it has a subtype, and that subtype is email. That means the value of this field will be validated according to common email rules. If I just write something like this one, the border becomes red. If I write, what is wrong here? Let's just delete something. So here, this can be an email address with, what is this in English? At. In Estonian, some say it's meow. In Russian, this is sabachka. And this is stochka. So if we remove this dot here, it still works. If we remove at, it won't validate anymore. But still, what is wrong here? If I enter at, it deletes everything. Wait, last step. Once I press Alt GR, it somehow focuses this field and therefore selects all the letters, and after that, if I write something, it replaces the previous characters. Next field is of type URL. Here an URL is expected. So here is just admin now. This is not a valid URL. Now it is already, according to the URL rules of Firefox. And we also see that there is ID. If we want to retrieve the value of any field, we should use the ID, otherwise we cannot know what field we want to get the value from. Next part, this is a field set. We can combine some fields. For instance, here there are radio buttons. For radio buttons, we can only make one choice at a time. If I click here, I cannot choose the number 2 while the 3 is chosen. If I click 2, 3 will be not chosen. And we can also disable some choices. Here the choice number 1 is disabled with the attribute disabled. And for knowing for the parser that this is a group, we have to use the same name for every radio input. So here the name is radio, and for the next one the same name is used. If we use different name, then they are not combined together anymore. And the ID should be different, of course. And field set will be written using the element field set. And for field set there is also a sub-element legend. There we can explain what is expected here. For radio buttons, the text we can write either on the left or right side. I like to write it to the right side because that way texts are left aligned. And for every input we can bind a label. A label can be written using the element label, and for every label there is the attribute 4. The value of 4 is the same as the corresponding value of the ID of input field. So here the ID of input field is radio underscore 1, and the corresponding label has the value radio underscore 1 for 4 attribute. Next, there is a password field. This is also a text type, but subtype is password. That means anything we type here is not shown. It's replaced by dots. Next one is of type tel. This means it should be a phone number. Here, inside a Firefox on a laptop or desktop computer, it doesn't make any difference. But if you test the same thing with your smartphone, then it recognizes it as a phone number and you can make a phone call by clicking it. Next, there is an example of a checkbox. A checkbox can be used for yes-no questions. If the answer is yes, we check it. If the answer is no, we untick it. Then the type is checkbox for input. If we want the checkbox to be checked at the beginning, we set the attribute checked for it. Next one is an input that takes numbers. Although here we set the type number, the value of this is still of type text string. So if we retrieve the data of this field, then the result is not numeric 4 or integer 4, but it is string 4. So for using it in JavaScript, we have to convert it first into float or integer using either parseFloat or parseInt function, because all the values of form fields are strings by default. For number arrows, here we can increment the value and decrement the value. The step we can set by using the attribute step. Here the step is half. We can also set the minimal and maximal value. So if we reach the value 10, we cannot go any further because the value of max is 10. And the other way around, if we go down, we cannot go below naught because here the value of min is naught. We can also write here something, but if the field loses focus, a red border appears. That means -5 is not the correct value for this field according to the rules. Next one is similar to the number field, but it is range. For range there is, how do we call it, something that we can drag. Here we can also set the minimal and maximal value and the step. Next one is a color picker, type color. If we click here, we can choose a color, this one, in hexadecimal. Next one is for file uploads. For file upload, we use the type file. If I click here, but we can change it. Let's upload these two. We can choose many here. Here it says valitud on 2 faili, 2 files chosen. This is possible because we use the attribute multiple. Without using the attribute multiple, we are only able to upload 1 file at a time. And the value for the attribute accept is the MIME type of files. So which type of files we can upload. Here we say that image files are expected. That's why it didn't show other files or files of other types at the beginning. Next one is a hidden field. We cannot see anything inside this box. And even here in Firebug it is grayed out. The type is hidden. Sometimes we have to pass some IDs and we put them into hidden fields. Next one is a map. We can click somewhere on the map and it registers the mouse coordinates. This is achieved by using the input element with the type image. Here we can set width and height like for img elements. We can also use alt like for img elements and src. So this is very similar to img element. Next one. What is this? A data list. Here is a hidden data list. So we use another element data list with sub-elements option. And the ID of data list is options. So the same ID we use for input with type text and for attribute list. So this way they are connected with each other. And inside the data list there are such values like email, text URL, text area select. You see, if I write S, it already provides select. If I write E, it provides everything where E is contained. This is like auto-completion. If we have too many values to create a static list, we should use dynamic auto-completion and even not data list. Next one is text area. Here we can write text on many lines, while in input we can only use one line. Text area is not input. This is text area. For text area we can also set columns and rows, but I like to set width and height in CSS. Next one is a drop-down list. The element for that is select, and inside select there are options which can be grouped into opt-group elements. Usually if we do not want to make sure that the user is lazy and does not make any choice and there is a default value, we can leave it here. But if we don't want that here is, for instance, email, a default value, then we create an additional element with an empty value, so that the user must do a choice, must click here. Otherwise a default value will be passed and maybe it's not what the user really wanted. So here you see the two groups. You cannot select a group, you can only choose between options. Every option can have a value. Also input can have a value. And inside the option element we write the text that will be shown here. Next is similar to the first drop down, but this is not a drop down. Here we see all the values at the time. We can also scroll if we don't want to show all the rows at time. This is a select box. Here we can also select many items if the attribute multiple is in use. The same op groups and options are used. So no difference here. But in CSS, is there a height? No, there is nothing set. It's just will not show more than 4 rows in Firefox by default. And then there are buttons. Here is a button of type button. If our form is not meant to send any data, just for doing a calculation locally, then we should use the type button. Otherwise, if we click here, the whole page will be reloaded. And the main button should be very different of a button that is not the main button. It has a bigger design, and this is submit button. Submit means if you click here, the content of the form will be posted using the method given as the value of the attribute method for element form, and using the address, which is the value for action. And here is HTML forms guide, a link. You can read more about forms. But I have also written some other useful information about the forms. So the first link is to the same forms guide. Now it is how to structure an HTML form. Here are some examples, maybe some other examples than I had. You can walk through this page on your own. We can use as many forms on the page as we want, but it is very confusing if we use a form inside another form. So for avoiding that case, I only use one form. I usually make the whole page to appear as a form. So all the elements are inside the form that way. Then there are names. I have already told what are the names for. Do you recall? If you put the attribute name for input, this is for sending data. If we submit some data, then the names will be used. Values are strings, as I told earlier, and all fields aren't available all the time. Some are hidden, some are read-only. Get, post, delete, put as possible values for method. And here are some useful elements. The main element is form. You can use field set, buttons, labels for inputs. And for anything we can use ID, and for fields whose data we want to send, we use the attribute name. Input, a link again. So this is a specification. Different attributes we can use on input element. These are the type values, but they are not fully working in every browser. For instance, date does not work in Firefox, although it works in Internet Explorer. If you use a special type, then you have to check whether it works in the browser where it should work. So the types are text, radio, checkbox, hidden, and the types of buttons can be either submit, reset, or button. I don't know why there is still the type reset. What reset does is just clearing all the values. So for every input field, we should put a label. That way the user knows what that field is for. And we should help user to fill out the form so that we show which fields are needed anyway and which fields are optional. We should always give a feedback, and we should validate on the fly. That means if the form is very long with many fields, and if the user enters an incorrect value into the field number 2, then we should not let the fill out the rest of the form before we give the feedback that the value of the second field has an incorrect value. That we can achieve using the form validation that is built in HTML5 rules, and we can also use JavaScript for that. Here are some suggestions for forms. Buttons should look like buttons. Of course, you can create the button in any style, but then if a button does not look like a button, a user may not know that it is a clickable object. Buttons should be placed there where users can find them, not somewhere hidden in hidden place. The most important button should look like it's the most important one, as we saw that I had a big button and a small button. And buttons should be in sensible order. And buttons should be labeled with what they do, not just submit or send or post. If the button is for sending some special data like login form, then the label should be I login. If the form is for creating a new user account, then the label should be what? I create a user account or something like that. You can also write shorter, you can avoid I, but usually everything that is written in the web page is related to the user that uses that web page. So we create a relation, the user is the web page. So I am doing something on the web page, so I create the account, I log in, I log out, not somebody else. So if users don't want to do something, then there should be no button for it. And if there is a destructive button, like for deleting something, or a reset button, then make it harder to find it. Otherwise, unintentionally, the user can click it and get the frustration. Oh, I did fill in 10 fields and now everything is empty again. There are three main methods how to group elements on forms. One way is to use steps. Step 1, step 2, step 3. They can be on different tabs. Can you bring an example where the steps method is used?
When you're paying for something online and you using like phone payments. So like you need to do 4 payments, and like every time you get like code for the first payment you get 1 code, for the second payment you get the second code, and you can't get the second payment code until you have into the first payment code.
If you have the PIN calculator, or what do you mean?
No, like if you're paying for something online, but you're using your phone as a payment tool.
For instance, in Amazon.
Yeah.
Okay. But if you also make a payment in online banking, then there is the first step where you fill in data, who is the or what person is the receiver, what is the amount and account number and so on, and then you click that button, and the next step is use PIN 2 if you use ID card, and after that the third step is whether you want to save that type of payment for later use, and the fourth step is to confirm that. At least in LHV it works this way. Then data can be grouped. Can you bring an example where there is a big form where data is grouped? Plus
like a Facebook, for instance.
My account. So there are also different groups. What's this one? Okay, here one group is for main data, like here for phones. If I click here, there are 2 groups. One group is for first phone number, second group is for the second phone number. And sometimes we want to give an overview of everything. For instance, there are many steps if you fill out the CV, like for CV Online or something like that. And then on the final page you get all those steps together for printing out. So next suggestions. The first thing I told you already. You should ask only for necessary data. If you want a new user to create a new account and you really only want to know the user name and password and maybe email address, then don't ask for phone number. Ask for phone number only when you need it. For instance, if we register people for a competition, so for just using the system there is no phone number needed, but for registering for a competition there is the phone number needed. So if the phone number is not entered previously, then while registering for the competition we ask for that phone number. Otherwise the user just sees too much and maybe does not want to fill out the form. And we should display clearly which fields are fillable and which are not, which are read-only. And if the lengths of fields are similar, we should show the same width. Otherwise they jump like stairs. And we should help the user to fill out the form. So instructions for every field. Label, title, maybe an additional instruction if it could not be clear how to fill it in. For instance, if we want to get the phone number according to a given standard, then we should write what the standard is. And if there is an error after the whole form is filled in, we should display where exactly on what field the error appears, so that we spare the time of a possible new customer. We can also use buttons without the form element. So those 3 buttons, both plain and drag. Here I have created a section for buttons, so inside the section I create a form with no method, or still no, without method. Button, type is button, and the label is boat. Next one is plain and then struck. Now there are 3 buttons, both plain and truck, but they don't look like on the layout of Max yet. Here on this layout, the width is the same for every button. and the width is 90. Now they have the same width. Height is 21. Now you see that the text is at the lower edge. We want it to be in the middle, but first, what's the font color? 333333. It's the same here. There is no font set. Font size 11. And for the text to appear in the middle, we should set the line height to be the same as the height of the button. Oh. There seems to be a padding or something, or a border. And now margin. This is 115 and height is 26, so together 141. And this is 195. Now it looks kind of Max's layout with 3 buttons that do not do anything. Max, what should happen if I click both?
I'm not sure. Like it's some kind of sign in the screen that it's like accepted. Or maybe like when you click with like bold, play or action. Drop, yeah. Maybe there should be like a picture when you click on the bold. On the left side there's like a bold bit, like up here is a picture of a boat and up the in and up. Yeah, we can just maybe do that in an animation with boat or protein animation picture.
So I am just thinking, what's the purpose of this landing page? So let's say I am a casual user. I land on that page and I click both. That means my wish is that Michael travels back to Vietnam by boat. And here it says, if the answer is yes, then you might be interested, and extra fee applies. Extra fee to whom? To you.
When you're creating a button and in the CSS file, you put like the button, then you put border radius. So I don't understand how it works. Does it just trim the edges?
What?
Border minus like border so minus sign and radius, and then you put like a value of 2 like in pixels or percentage. And like, does it trim the edges or how does it work?
You mean this one, or what?
No. No, border radius.
Ah, border radius.
Yeah.
Okay. Border radius. Here you can set how big is the radius. So as the line height or the height is 21 pixels, it cannot be more than half of it. So let's say, for instance, 8 pixels, then border radius is 0.5 rem, and now they are rounded. If I change it smaller, then the rounding also goes smaller. Boat plane truck. Here comes the next activity for you. On the slide number 37, this is about selectors. You choose your favorite website. If it is not suitable, you choose another one. Make sure that it's not the same as somebody else has, or actually it can also be the same site but a different page. Then you write down 3 first classes you find on that page from the source code. And you look for the rules for those classes and write down everything that the browser does according to those rules. So you explain every rule.